This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. Lend my voice to those who can't. It's time we try, it's time we care, it's time we stand. It starts with a voice.
Welcome to the Special Chronicles podcast. My name is Daniel Spikowski. I'm the founder, host of Special Chronicles, an athlete leader of Special Olympics Illinois, former Southern Striver Global Messenger of Special Olympics International. Our website, specialchronicles.com, to follow Special Chronicles on socials and wherever you get your podcasts. This week on the Special Chronicles podcast, we're excited to welcome Beale-Delvecchio, the new CEO of Special Olympics Illinois, to talk about his first year as CEO. Please put your virtual hands together as we welcome Pete on Special Chronicles. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you, Daniel, and thanks for the applause.
Yes. It's there's no actual person in my studio. You
don't have to tell anybody that.
Yeah. My dad is down the hall from where I am, but he's not like near the studio here.
That's all right.
So it's good. It's good to have you on the program, and gotten to know you a lot the past year. Yeah. So let's have you. And I think you
first, Daniel. Let me ask you a question. I know you had a big fundraising campaign going on, and I think it ends this month. So I'm curious. It's only a few days left. How's it going?
Good question. Yeah, I wouldn't plan on talking about that at the top of the episode, but So for Special Chronicles, we've let me actually pull it up. Let me pull it up.
Well, if you're going to talk about it later, you can do it then. That's you don't have to pull it up now. I was just curious.
No, I can. Yeah, no, I just pulled it up here. We have raised $16,000.
Awesome.
For Special Chronicles. So
congratulations! I'll give you the real clap for that.
Yeah, I know. That's where we need the applause. So that's because it's as you know, it's free to be able to listen to this podcast and listen, but those between our website and the podcast hosting and this technology, it does cost to be able to keep keep the podcast going. So, So for everybody that has donated, for a couple of the sponsors that we have had, I'm so grateful for everybody that has supported this podcast, so we can continue this year.
Great.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, because we really only do one given campaign for Special Chronicles, usually at the end of the year, to help us throughout the upcoming year. So it's really it's always, I'm always grateful that when we get support, because people see the value and that it's not just me behind the microphone, but we really have supporters and listeners. Awesome. So great question to kick off to that because I think this episode is going to go live at the beginning of next month, so it's a perfect time to kind of recap the end of this given campaign. So thank you. So now as we switch back to you, can you as I'm sure some of our listeners, at least in the Special Olympics Illinois community may have seen you out at events, but I'm sure that there might be some listeners that might just be meeting you for the first time. So can you share a little bit about your background and what led you to take the role as CEO of Special Olympics Illinois? Because this is your first time into this movement. So what can share a little bit about kind of what brought you into Special Olympics?
Sure. Be happy to. First, thanks again for inviting me to come on. Thanks for the warm welcome. Thrilled to be here. And in terms of how I got to the role as CEO of Special Olympics Illinois, first, my whole career has been in nonprofit for the last 31 years. I decided coming out of college that was the direction that I wanted to go. My experience really has been all in and around Chicago, except for this last year with Special Olympics Illinois. And it's been fun to actually get outside of the city and see so much of the rest of the state and all of the people who are part of Special Olympics Illinois and that family. But I won't go into all of the different places that I've been, but it really, I feel like the places that I have been, the different roles that I've had, I've been a CEO before at other organizations, an executive director, have really honed my skills, and I bring those to this role, and I'm grateful for those experiences. And I actually found out about this role through networking with some of my peers who were other CEOs of other nonprofits. And one of them had actually received the job description, and he said, "You should do this." And right away, I went back to when I was in high school. After basketball practice, I would go lifeguard at the pool, and Easter Seals would actually bring some of their clients to the pool. And there was a young man, David, who had a physical disability, and it was fairly nonverbal, but it was clear that he wanted to go off the diving board. So I decided we're going to figure out how to make this happen. And so we worked together for a couple of weeks. He did it. And of course, then he wanted to keep doing it. And I think that moment when someone suggested Special Olympics to me, and that story came back to my mind of the young man, his name was David. And it just fits so well. My whole nonprofit career really has been about working with people to achieve their full potential. And I think that's exactly what we do at Special Olympics Illinois every day. And so often, I know you know this, and unfortunately, sometimes parents are even told this before their children are even born, that you'll never do this, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. And so often you, Daniel, and so many others, and just like that young man, David, did, it's like, tell me what I can't do and I'll show you differently. And for me, it's really, my whole career is about the dignity of the person. And that's what I bring, and I feel very much at home here at Special Olympics Illinois. Awesome.
So building upon that introduction, and when you were, after you applied for the job as CEO, you talked about having some experience with those of us with disabilities, but once you started your job as CEO and you started to go out to events and see all that this organization, that this movement of Special Olympics is all about, from our sports to everything that we're able to do beyond sports as well. What were your initial impressions of the organization and of the Inclusion Revolution movement?
Sure. First of all, it was how many athletes and actually how many people, how many volunteers come together to, we have, over 17,000, 18,000 athletes, and then another several thousand unified partners that come together. I think all in, it's about 23,000, 24,000. And then tens of thousands of volunteers above and beyond that make Special Olympics Illinois happen. And actually not just here in Illinois, but across the country and across the world. It's really exciting to be part of a global movement. I'm actually really excited. I get to go to World Winter Games coming up in Italy.
Awesome.
And thrilled to go. We have 3 of our athletes who are going, and really excited to be there with them and experience that global feel. But here in Illinois, it's been amazing. And I have to say that some of my other first impression was our staff and how dedicated they are to the mission. I think regardless of what department, whether they're in the finance department, development, administration, or our program staff, who really put on the sports and competitions, to those who do athlete leadership and health education, everybody comes to work every day passionate and excited for the mission. And it's been very welcoming. Athletes and their families have been very welcoming into the movement as well.
Awesome. Love that. And we're going to go ahead and take a short break. When we come back, we'll get into some reflections on your first year, because I believe you just celebrated your first year as CEO of Special Olympics Illinois. After this short break, to let you all know that support for Special Chronicles comes from listeners like you, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, our giving campaign, but you can continue to join our supporters with a monthly or one-time donation so we can operate our studio, continue our mission, give respect and voice to those of us with disabilities, and keep the lights on, keep this microphone on, keep everything running here at Special Chronicles. You can support this podcast at specialchronicles.com/give. And if you want to access bonus content, including us getting when the pre-show and getting the camera, so it's not fuzzy and all that kind of behind the scenes content, you can join at specialchronicles.com/plus to be able to get access to see that. And so you, I believe this past fall, you celebrated your 1 year. And so as we talk about accomplishments and looking back on your first year, what are some of the achievements that you're most proud of from the past year?
First and foremost, it was just getting around the state to every region and getting to meet people, our staff that work in those regions, and athletes and families from those regions, volunteers. Dave Breen, my predecessor, was very gracious in spending time and taking around and introducing me to people. And that was phenomenal. And it was a lot, to get around. And I know I spent over 50 nights away from home. I think it was, I tallied it up, it was like 51 nights, and I drove almost 20,000 miles around the state. And that was on purpose, to get out and meet people. And I need to continue to do that, because I haven't met everybody yet and haven't spent enough time in different places. So I'm excited to continue that this year. And I would say one of the other things that I'm really proud of is that we developed a strategic plan over the last year, which will be our plan for the next 3 years. As I was coming in, our plan was coming to an end, and so we needed to develop, what the next few years were going to look like. So that was exciting to work on, to get different ideas and feedback from so many different constituents in the Special Olympics family. Including our staff, but athletes, coaches, volunteers, donors. So many people contributed. And it was a lot to get through and articulate what the needs are and what that's going to look like. And really excited about where we're going. And I know you have some other questions, so we're going to get into that. I won't get into the details.
Definitely. We'll get into some more of those details in just a little bit. But just like those of us with disabilities, we have faced challenges when we were born. We face challenges every day. But for you, from the past year, what were some of the biggest challenges that you've faced, and how did you address them?
Well, number one, as I alluded to already, just getting around and getting to meet everybody that makes everything happen around here. And so there was a geographic challenge, number one, and then trying to remember everybody and what everybody's role is, and so that's one very practical. But certainly, as with all nonprofit organizations, if you don't have money coming in, there's no mission. Or I guess you could say the more money that comes in, the more mission you can have. And so that's the other challenge, because we had an incredible grant that came through the American Rescue Plan Act over 3 years, and that was millions of dollars that came in to the state that was awarded to us, and helped us to do a number of different things and improve quality of our equipment and the medals that we give out at competitions and so many other things. But as that grant came to an end last year, we had to create this year's budget with a big, a significant hole that we had to figure out how to continue to do what we're doing without that money coming in. So I'm excited about the ways that we've talked about trying to bring in new revenue sources, and then we were also able to put that budget together without cutting any staff positions. So that was a major challenge and accomplishment.
Awesome. And speaking of surprises, were there any thing that was unexpected, or what was some of the unexpected aspects of your role as CEO, or the organization of Special Olympics Illinois that stood out to you?
I think part of it is that as Special Olympics Illinois, we're part of, obviously, Special Olympics Incorporated, which is international, and I didn't realize how independent we are. There's the general rules and things that we have to comply with from Special Olympics Incorporated, but really, as long as you comply with those, it's very much like a franchise model. You're free then to run it as you see fit, and so there was less that is prescribed from Special Olympics Incorporated, which sometimes that's challenging, but it also gives you a lot of good flexibility. And one of the things that I really actually enjoyed about that is how much best practice sharing there is amongst the CEOs. There's a number of different groups through Special Olympics North America that convenes the CEOs in Canada and the United States. And that has been great for me to hear how people are doing things in other states, and are there best practices that we can bring here, and are there best practices that we already have here in Illinois that we can share.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm sure you've over the past year you've been able to connect with some of the CEOs of other Special Olympics programs.
Yeah. There's a new and newer CEO group, which now actually in the last 5 years, about half of the CEOs in the United States have turned over. There's about, I think, 25 of us that are new. So it's fun to have that group, as well as there's a Great Lakes region group. We get together. And then, of course, there's the meetings where we have all of the CEOs together. So a lot of different forums to share.
Awesome. So we're going to take another quick break and then get into a little bit of your leadership and vision and goals around inclusion within this movement. After a quick break, to let you all know that support for Special Chronicles comes from the ComEd Energy First Ambassador Program, the country's first energy and solar efficiency education program designed for, taught by people with disabilities. You can learn more at specialchronicles.com/ComEd. That's specialchronicles.com/ComEd. And if you all go on to specialchronicles.com, we've got another series on that's on this podcast where we give you a lot of energy and solar efficiency education to help you to save energy. So so links specialchronicles.com/ComEd. So speaking of you've as you talked about in your introduction, you've had leadership experience with other nonprofits and other organizations. So, but now coming to Special Olympics Illinois, we talk about your leadership style. How has your leadership style evolved over the past year at Special Olympics Illinois?
Sure. I don't know if my leadership style, it hasn't changed, but you use different skills more in different environments. And so, in my first year, I feel like I'm a pretty good listener, and I've had to listen even more this year because I did not come up through the movement. And so it's been really a year of learning and asking a lot of questions, relying on others to educate me about the mission and how we carry it out, whether it's on the sports side or health education, what athlete leadership looks like. I've learned a lot, and just how our regions operate, and getting to know the people in those regions. So I would say what's really evolved is really honing those listening skills, and then taking those and then using them, particularly in something like working with our team to craft the strategic plan for the year. So that was a big challenge, and how things have, I guess, evolved for me this year.
Awesome. And now, kind of switching gears a little bit to your vision. You mentioned just a little bit ago about developing a plan for the next few years, and so what is, and now that you've had 1 year of experience within this movement, within this organization, what is your vision for the future of Special Olympics Illinois, and how have you begun to lay the groundwork for that?
It really revolves around what we're calling our core four, which is to build the movement, change the game, expand our roster, and champion inclusion are the four categories that we're using. And one that has to come first, we talk about build the movement. That's really about resource raising, because as I said, the more money we can raise, the more mission we can have. And we want to be able to add staff and strengthen quality of program. And so our initial focus is, what do we need to do to be able to raise more resources, whether that's through in-kind gifts, people giving their expertise, their time, their products to us, and it's also fundraising, going out and chasing grants and building our relationships with donors who want to support the work that we're doing. And so that really is where we're focused now, so that we can get to some of the other pieces, like expand our roster is kind of self-explanatory, right? We want to be able to have more athletes, and I'll say a little bit more about that later. And change the game is, again, lifting that level and ensure that our athletes are part of the leadership of Special Olympics Illinois even more than they already are. And of course, champion inclusion is another one that's fairly self-explanatory, and we have some goals around that. But in this first year, everybody had one of their goals had to be around resource raising, and what were they going to do to help us, bring in whether it was in kind or cash to move things forward and support what we do. Awesome.
And as you know, inclusion is a big part of this organization, is a big part of this movement. There's the as you and our listeners see on the screen, the inclusion revolution is a big part. So how is the organization, how is this movement of Special Olympics, particularly here in Illinois, working to promoting inclusivity and awareness within the, across the state?
Sure. Really comes down to that vision. The vision, not only here in Illinois, but for Special Olympics in general, is to bring people with and without intellectual disabilities, differently abled people together in the community, and to do more and more of that. Like, ultimately, that's the vision. That's what we hold ourselves accountable to. Are we doing that? And so our goals, that was another goal that everybody had to have this year as we continue to build on the culture we already have, is around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And what does that look like internally for our staff, but even externally, as I talked about, expanding our roster, trying to serve more athletes. And so looking at, are there populations that are underrepresented in our current population of athletes? And how do we reach those people? And what does that look like? And what are the tools that we need to be able to reach out to them? Some of it might mean we have to translate some of our materials into other languages so that people can be comfortable and access, and just letting people in different communities know that we're around in different ways that they can engage. Also includes some of the population, as you well know, Daniel, after age 22, we see a significant drop-off in the number of athletes, because a lot of athletes are involved through school or through programs that get funding until someone ages out at age 22. Mm-hmm. And so part of our goal is to be able to have even better handoffs for the people who work, whether it's in schools or different agencies, around transition plans, so that athletes can stay connected. They can find a local agency or park district where they can plug in and continue to be part of Special Olympics.
Awesome.
So, some older athletes, that's another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. And I think even within our Athlete Leadership Council, that's something that we've talked about the past few years, is as Asian athletes, and like when athletes get in the 60s, 70s, 80s, what they might not be able to necessarily do the same sports that they've been doing when they're younger, but like what else within Special Olympics can they be doing?
Right.
Awesome. So we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we'll get into some of the programs and initiatives, everything from athlete impact to athlete leadership, and how you're working with us, with our athlete voices, within your job as CEO of Special Olympics Illinois. And this episode is also brought to you by United Airlines Bridge Disability Business Resource Group, connecting people of all abilities. Learn more on United's commitment to disability inclusion for employment and travel at specialchronicles.com/United, including hiring Special Olympics athletes like myself as employees of United Airlines, which Pete, that's something that you have, that I think you attended an event last year. Yeah, so specialchronicles.com/United if you all want to learn more. And moving into talking about some programs, are there any programs or initiatives that you've focused on enhancing or expanding that?
Sure. I think we should start with the one you were just mentioning. I think I love the fact that United has the SOSA program, and it's phenomenal. Now we celebrated the 5th anniversary last fall, in its 6th year now, and United really is doing an incredible job. They really are a model for other corporations, what that looks like, and having a workforce that's inclusive and just what that can look like. It's phenomenal. Hyatt has also done some things like that. Amazon Fresh Stores. There's been so many, and then Jewel hires so many of our athletes. There's so many corporations that do it, and some one-off. School Health has been a great partner of ours. There's some great examples out there, and it's like, how do we get more corporations to do that? Like that's, we have unified champion schools. I'd love to, really build a program around unified, champion companies, and what that can look like and grow that. But speaking of UCS, that's another program that's been phenomenal to get to know and see how many schools, 400 across the state who have some form of UCS programming. We've given, some of the UCS National Banner Awards out. Those have been phenomenal things to be a part of, and see how many schools are, have whole school engagement, not just around sports, but inclusive leadership, and what does that look like, and to make it part of school culture. So that's another program that's been fun to get to know and focus on, trying to grow. But as we were just talking about some of our older athletes and getting them involved, it's been fun to actually meet. We have just a couple who were at the very first Special Olympics games at Soldier Field in 1968. And sadly, we had two athletes who participated pass away this past year. But we have a few others who have, and there's so much we can do for so many, and we need to find ways to do more. Not only the Chicago area, but all the way downstate, Carbondale and beyond, down there in Region K and JHGI, all the regions in between.
Awesome. I love that. And want to touch something briefly that you said about unifying companies and United, like when the program got started 5 years ago. That's not like looking for an airline, looking for aviation is something like when I was growing up in school was not something that I was told was possible for those of us with intellectual disability. So it's nice that whether it's United Airlines or these some of these other partners of Special Olympics that are really seeing the value of inclusion and seeing how they can not just hire us, but like take it to a new level.
Right.
So speaking of the athlete, of the impact of us athletes, is there a story or an example of how this movement's work has directly impacted an athlete or family that you have met over the past year? I mean, there might be a lot of athletes, but like, is there maybe one or two that kind of stick out?
Sure. There's one story I want to tell, and I think this may dovetail with I think another question you might ask later. But I was just at Bradley Bourbonnais Community High School for their UCS banner presentation, and they put together a video, and they had parents on talking about the impact the program has had for them. And this is the story that I've heard so many times over and over in the last year. And that really is how some parents never thought their child would play sports or have a venue to be able to do that. And beyond that, have a community of friends. Whether I've heard it on both sides, whether it's our traditional athletes in the community amongst the athletes there. I've also heard it on the Unified Champion Schools side, and the barriers that get broken down there, and how some of our athletes have friends, who don't have disabilities or intellectual disabilities, and how that has grown their friend base and what that looks like. It really has been phenomenal to hear. But there was this one story in particular. It was Nate's parents. Nate was an athlete there on the basketball team, and that was exactly the story that they told. They just never could have imagined what Special Olympics could offer to them and to their family, to their son. So.
Awesome. And I'm sure that those tons of stories that you're hearing from athletes and families and across the state. Moving now into athlete leadership, as you know, athlete leadership is a big part of this movement. Well, it's not just an organization that is full those of us with intellectual disabilities, but it's a chance to work and to lead alongside with us. And as you know, I've been involved in athlete leadership, both here at the local level in Illinois, and even for the past 5 years, even to the highest athlete leadership role with Special Olympics International as a Southern Tribal global messenger on the international level, and speaking at the World. We spoke at the World Games in Abu Dhabi in 2019, at the World Games in Berlin in 2023, and so there's a lot. How have you seen the movement's role in athlete leadership and broader advocacy for people with intellectual disabilities? What has been your experience with athlete leadership?
Sure. Athlete leadership is essential for us. I can, just in that last question, you asked me, what stories have I heard about the impact? It's one thing for me to talk about it and see what I've heard. It's another thing to have athletes like yourself talk to people and say what it means to you, or to have parents or family members talk about what Special Olympics has meant to them. And it's so much more valuable to have first person. Like I'm telling it third person, you tell it first person, and everybody wants that first person story. Like, tell me how it's impacted you. And that's what athlete leadership does. It's that training to be able to articulate your story and the impact Special Olympics has had on you for a broader audience. Sometimes that's at a dinner with people, or at our Champions Ball, or at different events that we have. But beyond the external facing in those stories, it's also internal. It's that training that athlete leadership does for like your peers. How to run a meeting when we come together. Our athlete leadership academy that we had, that you spoke at, some of your peers, Lisa Noble and others, we're giving instruction around, what that means and how to bring everyone together and have an agenda and work through that agenda. That's essential leadership skills, not only for meetings, but then that translates to being on the field, on the court, in the pool. And so athlete leadership, I think, is something that can only grow and become even more meaningful because of all of the different ways that it affects what we do.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. It like you said, it takes our skills from on the field or on the basketball court or in the pool and brings it off the field, and even in the community too, we're able to lead that way too.
That's part of that strategic. It's part of that change the game part of our strategic plan, is to continue to grow athlete leadership. Awesome.
And speaking as kind of building upon athlete leadership, as you know, the voices of us athletes are important, and we have everything from the Athlete Leadership Council, where we help to give input on that plan that you talked about, or other or other initiative that you and the staff are working on. We've got the athlete leadership team that just before we got on this podcast, I got off a call with those five of us that's on our athlete leadership team. And so how does the movement incorporate, or how have you seen this movement of Special Olympics be able to incorporate athlete feedback into its decision making process when you go and talk with the staff?
So I think it becomes formally and informally. After we have our big events like summer games, there's a survey that goes out to everybody. And then, Tracy Hilliard on our team, who runs our state competition team, they take that information and go through and hear what people have to say about different things. Could be logistics, could be how the, a sport was run, could be how the lunch was, any number of different things that it touches on. And so they take that feedback and look and see, like, where can we improve? How do we continuously get better at what we do? And then there's informal ways where staff will surface like, hey, I've had this athlete say this to me, or this athlete said this, and they surface those avenues, through those avenues of feedback as well, which is maybe a little more informal. But one of the things now under Michelle Mark's leadership, we are growing the Athlete Leadership Council, again, kind of renewing efforts there to make sure that we have at least one representative from each of our 11 regions, so that there's feedback coming through athletes, so peer-to-peer through that program and from every part of the state. And so that gets surfaced. So that's kind of a hybrid, a little bit of, it's a formal setup that is bringing all those different stories, what people liked, what they didn't, what opportunities they had or didn't have, or how a race was set up, or what the stumbling blocks were, all of those pieces, right down to, how do we promote health, being healthy athletes, and health education.
Awesome. And you mentioned a little bit about community engagement, and as you know, the volunteers that we have at Special Olympics are a big part. I'm sure, as you know, a lot of events wouldn't happen without the volunteers. So how have you worked to strengthen the community engagement and the involvement of volunteers at a lot of our events?
You are 100% right. Like, nothing in Special Olympics in Illinois happens without volunteers. We rely on them so heavily, and we have so many people who are just so gracious and dedicate their time in so many different ways. I can't even begin to describe all the different ways people volunteer. But one of the things we actually did, I said, our budget was tight this year, and we had to look at where we were going to cut. But one of the places we chose to invest is to actually hire a position that will be a director of volunteers. And, you had asked about corporations, for example, and what that looks like, or to have community groups come in. And, what does that experience look like? The idea is with having the director of volunteers, to be able to give them a better sense coming in. All right, this is what to expect, and this is the role you're going to play that day. Whatever it is, whether it's timing a certain event, or setting up a certain event, or getting athletes from into the bullpen and lined up the right way. There's so many different things, and have those job descriptions so people know coming in. and then find out after the fact, okay, how was your experience? What would have helped you to have an even better experience? Or what made it a great experience, and what things do we need to make sure that we continue to do? So we're going to formalize more of what it looks like, to be a volunteer and what that experience is. And I think that will grow and make sure that people continue to have good experiences when they volunteer, so that they come back and want to do it again.
Awesome. I love that you're really looking to get more volunteers. And you mentioned a little bit earlier. We mentioned a few of the partners that Special Olympics has, and I love the idea that you talked about of really, just like we've got unified champion schools, but developing unified companies. And what role have you seen, or do you see that corporate sponsors play into the success of Special Olympics Illinois? And as you know, we've got a lot of partners that the development team is working on. But how, whether it's continuing a lot of the partners and sponsors that we already have, or developing new partners to come into Special.
Well, we need our existing partners to stay and continue to do what they're doing and be that example for others, and to bring in new companies. Corporate partnerships have an incredible role to play. To answer your question shortly, they, like I said, again, your employer, United, has really set the bar high in terms of what that looks like, how much they value you all as employees, and make it clear to everyone else who works at United how much they value what you bring in your roles as service ambassadors, and what that does for United as a company. And taking that and showing other companies what it can look like. That is a key role for corporate partners, because it not only promotes inclusion and valuing people. So often people with, as you know, people with intellectual disabilities, other disabilities, are counted out and as not able to contribute. And so often you come back and say, no, I can, and this is how I'm going to do it. And you show that it can be different. And United gives those opportunities. All those other companies we talked about give those opportunities. And we need more companies to do that. And so that spreads the word about inclusion. And beyond that, so many corporations bring volunteers to us. And sometimes that's people's first exposure to Special Olympics, is because their company signed up to come, bring 100 volunteers to help make our spring games happen in Chicago, or in Bloomington, or in Carbondale, across the state. And volunteers, as we talked about, are our lifeblood. We can't do what we do without volunteers. And corporations also support us financially, and that we have to pay our staff, and sometimes we have to pay for facilities that we rent. Sometimes we have to pay for those that officiate our athletic competitions. There's as much as we get so many gifts in kind, there are things that we still have to purchase, and maybe sometimes we're purchasing those at a discount, but we still need money to be able to do that. And corporations play an incredible role there as well. So, 3 parts.
Awesome.
Voting inclusion, giving people opportunities, and supporting us financially.
Awesome. And now, as we look forward to the future, I'm going to combine a couple of these questions. Sure. What are your top priorities for the organization in the coming years? And then when you look at as it shows, when you set some of those goals and some of top priorities. There's going to be challenges that come up. So what are some of your top priorities for Special Olympics Illinois in the coming years? And then what challenges do you anticipate, and how do you plan to tackle them?
Sure. Well, I'm going to come back to our strategic plan again. And what I really like is that it really has defined what our work is going to be over the next few years, with the ultimate goal of trying to be able to serve more athletes in the state of Illinois and be that example and do our part to that global vision that we're chasing of bringing more and more people with and without differently able people together in the community. So again, it's building the movement, which is all of that resource raising. It's changing the game where we're getting more athletes involved in leadership roles, and it's expanding our roster. Like I said, finding those underrepresented communities, figuring out why certain communities of people aren't involved, and what we can do to break down those barriers. And then also championing inclusion. And, that could be challenging sometimes in this environment, but we know the value that people with a disability can bring, and helping people understand that, and really promoting what inclusion looks like and the gift that is to the community in general. So that really is going to drive our work for the next several years.
Awesome. I love that. And as we talk about some of your personal insights, what have you learned about yourself during this first year as CEO? And then do you have a standout moment or a memorable moment or experience from this past year?
Yes. So it's, for me personally, there's so much to absorb. And so I think that's been my growth. It's like, okay, you can't do everything, but there's so much that you can do. And we have done a lot. And so I'm really excited about this first year, how much I've learned, and really what the groundwork that we've laid for the years ahead. And that's really exciting to now actually, we've talked about it for so long, and now get out there and actually do that work is exciting to implement everything that we've talked about. And it's easy to do. I did the work. People ask me this all the time. And I have one of the best jobs in the world. It is so easy to be passionate about, because you see what it means and what it can do. And so the story that I wanted to share, I alluded back to Nate, one of our athletes, and his parents, talking about what it's meant for him and for their family. And in that video, they had this moment, and I was there for this moment last year. It was our state basketball tournament for Unified Champion Schools, and Nate's team was down by like 14 points. And there was like 10 seconds left. So there was no way that they were going to be able to come back and win the game. But Nate had missed a couple of shots, but his teammates gave him the ball again, and he had a 3-point shot. And he was so excited, and he was running down, waving his arms, and like the last 5 seconds came and expired, and everybody in the gym was cheering. His team ran onto the court and carried him off the court. They had just lost the game, but you couldn't even tell that. And everybody was so excited. And I think that's really what it's all about for me, and why it's so easy to be passionate, and what that can look like if you just give people an opportunity and they can show you what they can do. That helps feed what I do, make it easy. It makes it easy for me to be passionate about it every day. Awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing, not just for myself, but for a lot of the other athletes that I've met in this movement. There's so many opportunities that Special Olympics has given us from the many different sports that we're able to try, and then the various athlete leadership opportunities. We've got a few final questions before you get back to the rest of your evening. But for advice for leaders, and as you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, getting to meet some of the other CEOs and some of the other leaders of other Special Olympics programs, what advice would you give to someone who is stepping into a leadership role at a Special Olympics program across the U.S. or across the globe? You mentioned that you're going to be going to the World Winter Games in Italy in a couple months, and I'm sure you will get to meet some of the other CEOs and leaders of those Special Olympics programs. So what advice would you give to someone that is stepping into whether it's a CEO or another leadership role within the Special Olympics program?
Yeah, I think the key is to remember that you don't have to have all of the answers. And quite frankly, there's people that are doing various jobs that know best what needs to happen because it's their job. They do it day in and day out, and it's not your job to tell them what to do. It's to be able to listen and find out what it is that they need to do that job. I really look at my role as a leader, as the CEO, my team. Our job is to find the resources and provide for the staff that do the direct engagement with our athletes. Whatever they need to do their job, it's our job to figure out how to provide it for them. And so you don't have to know how to do that job. You just have to know how to be able to support them.
Awesome. I love that. And before we get to the final question, is there any else you'd like to share with the audience about your journey with the work of Special Olympics Illinois, or just your overall experience on the Special Chronicles podcast?
Well, the podcast has been great. So many fantastic questions, Daniel. I appreciate the time and the thought that you put into putting the questions together. Obviously, we've talked for almost an hour now, and it's been a lot of fun. I would say the one thing that I want to share is just how joyful a year it has been. I've worked in a number of different nonprofits, and every mission important and, again, easy to be passionate about. And I think one thing about Special Olympics Illinois that has been just phenomenal is how much joy there is in the mission day to day. It's not to say that there aren't challenges and things we have to navigate. There always are. But the joy that the athletes bring, that families bring, that staff bring to doing this work day to day is phenomenal.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's definitely been a joy talking with you for the past hour, and I'll let you I don't usually share a lot of behind the scenes of what goes into getting ready for these podcasts, but I'll let you and our listeners know of something that I've been trying out for the past month to get ready for these podcasts. Is there may have been a little bit help from the Chat GPT to help with usually I don't use any help with but my content producer who she lives in Maryland, and as she started the Special Olympics cheerleading program, she has a daughter who is an athlete in Maryland, but she introduced me to the Chat GPT, and so I was kind of
knowing how to use the tool is important.
It is.
It's and to get the right things out of it, you have to be able to give it the right inputs and ask the right things. So there's a skill there. So congratulations on developing a new skill.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So this final question, to introduce that final question, we've got a bumper. So let's go ahead and roll that bumper.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising. Peaceful protesters.
In a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference.
Difference.
Our demands are
Equality.
dignity, and the recognition of our shared humanity.
We will not stop.
or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
More divided than ever.
And coming together has never been more urgent. The revolution
Is inclusion.
Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
So, as you have come to see, the inclusion revolution is a big part of this movement, and we don't just want our listeners of this podcast to be listening to us for the past hour and to consume this content. I mean, it's great to be able to listen to this podcast and consume the content, but what we ultimately want is our listeners to take inclusion back into their communities, to like I said, not just listen to the podcast, but really bring just like how Special Olympics brings it into the community. But we want our listeners of this podcast to take action and bring it to a conclusion. And I've been asking this final question ever since I came back from the 2019 Special Olympics World Games in Abu Dhabi, and I think it really gets to the heart of what we've been talking about for the past hour. So, what does inclusion mean to you?
Inclusion means to me is looking at what someone can bring, as opposed to so often in our world, people just get excluded. Oh, they can't do this, or oh, they're not going to help me here, or anything like that. And I think the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. And we have to get to a place where we look at all of the different values that people can bring, and that's what inclusion means. Is looking for that positive, that piece that someone can contribute, and being not doing things for somebody else, but doing it with, and together. It's not what I think someone else needs. It's hearing from them and making sure they're part of the equation. That's inclusion. We do things together and with everybody's gifts and talents, rather than what someone's not bringing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a perfect way to wrap up this episode. And I loved that, particularly that part that you talked about of doing things with. That's a big part that I think I've seen Special Olympics going towards in the future is not just doing stuff for us athletes, not just being an organization, not just being a movement for us, but doing stuff with us. And I loved how you connected that to inclusion, because that's how we're able to make our communities, make society better.
Right.
Awesome. So before we let you get back, a few final plugs for our listeners. You can shop our merchandise store. We have our I'm not wearing it today. I've got it in the other room, but we've got our Disabled Voices Matter merch. We've got T-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs. You can 60% of the profits will go back to Special Chronicles. So you can go to specialchronicles.com/shop to find those T-shirts. I've heard from a number of our listeners, and actually I got a picture of one of our listeners in the UK, in Great Britain, wearing one of our T-shirts. She's a 6-time World Games cyclist, and she was wearing it when she was cycling. So definitely you all can go there. Tap that follow button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our newsletter. You can find all those links on specialchronicles.com. Thank you again, Pete, for taking the time for the past hour to come on the Special Chronicles podcast. It's been
you're welcome. It was a pleasure for me, and thank you for the invitation. I'm really glad I was able to be here.
Awesome. So, until then, we'll be back next week, same time, same Well, same time, which would be anytime. Same time, anytime that you listen to podcasts, because it's on demand, right? Yeah, on demand. We'll talk to you all next week right here on SpecialChronicles.com. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles podcast. Our podcast was produced by Daniel Smikowski on the Special Chronicles Network. Follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Subscribe, rate, and review Special Chronicles on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our website, specialchronicles.com, where you can stream our archives of over 500 episodes for absolutely for free. Also, there's a list of our favorites, original series, award-winning columns, and blogs. And sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive bonus content delivered to your inbox. Again, specialchronicles.com. Special Chronicles is hosted by Podbean Podcast Hosting. Our live streams are powered by StreamYard. Thanks, as always, to our business manager, Adam Smukowski, who always encourages us to never give up. I'm Daniel Smukowski, back next week with more stories.
Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
Awesome. So let me go ahead and stop.
Right. Before you stop recording, so is that whose voice is that? Garrett
Anderson? Yeah. That's Garrett's voice. I recorded that a number of years ago. He came in studio here, and we recorded that voiceover. I mean, it took a bunch of takes, but yeah. That's Garrett's voice.
I thought I recognized it. That's great. And this would have to come out of the bonus the part.
The bonus,
So I don't know if you need to stop, and can you stop and restart? Or
yeah. I can stop and.
All right, pause and let me ask you a question.
Yeah. I can edit all this out. Yeah. Let me go ahead and stop the recording here.